The First Ottoman Venetian War was fought between the Republic of Venice and her allies and the Ottoman Empire from 1463 to 1479. Fought shortly after the capture of Constantinople and the remnants of the Byzantine Empire by the Ottomans, it resulted in the loss of several Venetian holdings in Albania and Greece, most importantly the island of Negroponte, Euboea, which had been a Venetian protectorate for centuries. The war also saw the rapid expansion of the Ottoman navy, which became able to challenge the Venetians and the Knights Hospitaller for supremacy in the Aegean Sea. In the closing years of the war, however, the Republic managed to recoup its losses by the de facto acquisition of the Crusader Kingdom of Cyprus. The First Ottoman Venetian War was fought between the Republic of Venice and her allies and the Ottoman Empire from 1463 to 1479. Fought shortly after the capture of Constantinople and the remnants of the Byzantine Empire by the Ottomans, it resulted in the loss of several Venetian holdings in Albania and Greece, most importantly the island of Negroponte, Euboea, which had been a Venetian protectorate for centuries. The war also saw the rapid expansion of the Ottoman navy, which became able to challenge the Venetians and the Knights Hospitaller for supremacy in the Aegean Sea. In the closing years of the war, however, the Republic managed to recoup its losses by the de facto acquisition of the Crusader Kingdom of Cyprus. In early August, the Venetians retook Argos and refortified the Isthmus of Corinth, restoring the Hexamilion Wall and equipping it with many cannons. They then proceeded to besiege the fortress of the Acrocorinth, which controlled the northwestern Peloponnese. The Venetians engaged in repeated clashes with the defenders and with Omar Bey's forces, until they suffered a major defeat on 20 October, which resulted in the wounding and subsequent death of the Marquis Bertoldodist. The Venetians were then forced to lift the siege and retreat to the Hexamilion and to Nafplion. In Bosnia, Matthias Corvinus seized over 60 fortified places and succeeded in taking its capital, Judges. After a 3-month siege, on 16 December, Ottoman reaction was swift and decisive. Sultan Mehmed II dispatched his Grand Vizier, Mahmud Pasha Angelovic, with an army against the Venetians. To confront the Venetian fleet, which had taken station outside the entrance of the Dardanelles Straits, the Sultan further ordered the creation of the new shipyard of Cadiga Limani in the Golden Horn, named after the Cadiga type of galley, and of 2 forts to guard the straits, Kilad al-Bayr and Sultan II. The Mauryan campaign was swiftly victorious for the Ottomans, although messages received from Omar Bey had warned of the strength and firepower of the Venetian position at the Hexamilion. Mahmud Pasha decided to march on, hoping to catch them at unawares. In the event, the Ottomans reached the isthmus just in time to see the Venetian army, demoralized and riddled with dysentery, leave its positions and sail to Nauplia. The Ottoman army raised the Hexamilion, and advanced into the Mora. Argos fell, and several forts and localities that had recognized Venetian authority reverted to their Ottoman allegiance. Zagan Pasha was reappointed governor of the Mora, while Omar Bey was given Mahmud Pasha's army and tasked with taking the Republic's holdings in the southern Peloponnese, centered around the 2 forts of Coron and Modon, Mathoni. Sultan Mehmed II, who was following Mahmud Pasha with another army to reinforce him, had reached Zetounian, Lamia, before being apprised of his vizier's success. Immediately, he turned his men north, towards Bosnia. However, the Sultan's attempt to retake Judges in July and August 1464 failed, with the Ottomans retreating hastily. In the face of Corvinus' approaching army, a new Ottoman army under Mahmud Pasha then forced Corvinus to withdraw, but Judges was not retaken for many years after. However, the death of Pope Pius II on 15 August in Ancona spelled the end of the crusade. In the meantime, for the upcoming campaign of 1464, the Republic had appointed Sigismondo Malatesta, the ruler of Rimini and one of the ablest Italian generals, as land commander in the Mora. The forces available to him along with mercenaries and stratioti, however, were limited, and in his tenure in the Mora he was unable to achieve much. Upon his arrival in the Mora in midsummer, he launched attacks against Ottoman forts, and engaged in a siege of Mistra in August to October. He failed to take the castle, however, and had to abandon the siege at the approach of the relief force under Euboea. Small-scale warfare continued on both sides, with raids and counter-raids, but a shortage of manpower and money meant that the Venetians remained largely confined to their fortified bases, while Euboea's army roamed the countryside. The mercenaries and stratiati in Venice's employ were becoming disgruntled at the lack of pay, while increasingly, the Mora was becoming desolate, as villages were abandoned and fields left untended. The bad supply situation in the Mora forced Euboea to withdraw to Athens in fall 1465. Malatesta himself, disenchanted by the conditions he encountered in the Mora and increasingly anxious to return to Italy and attend to his family's affairs and the ongoing feud with the papacy, remained largely inactive throughout 1465, in spite of the relative weakness of the Ottoman garrisons following the withdrawal of Euboea from the peninsula. In the Aegean, the new Venetian admiral, Orsato Justinian, tried to take Lesbos in the spring of 1464, and besieged the capital Mytilene for 6 weeks, until the arrival of an Ottoman fleet under Mehmed Pasha on 18 May forced him to withdraw. Another attempt to capture the island shortly after also failed, and Justinian died at Modon on 11 July. His successor, Jacopo Laudon, spent the remainder of the year in ultimately fruitless demonstrations of force before the Dardanelles. In early 1465, Mehmed II sent peace feelers to the Venetian Senate in 1465, distrusting the Sultan's motives. These were rejected. Soon after, the Venetians were embroiled in a conflict with the Knights Hospitaller of Rhodes, who had attacked a Venetian convoy carrying Moorish merchants from the Mamluk Sultanate. This event enraged the Mamluks, who imprisoned all Venetian subjects living in the Levant, and threatened to enter the war on the Ottoman side. The Venetian fleet, under Laudon, sailed to Rhodes under orders to release the Moors, even by force. In the event, a potentially catastrophic war between the two major Christian powers of the Aegean was avoided, and the merchants were released to Venetian custody. By 1465 the Maniat-Cladas brothers, Crocodilos and Epiphani, were leading bands of Stratiati on behalf of Venice against the Turks in southern Peloponnese. They put Vardania and their lands into Venetian possession, for which Epiphani then acted as governor. In April 1466, Vettor Capello, the most vociferous proponent of the war, replaced Laudon as Captain General of the Sea. Under his leadership, the Venetian war effort was reinvigorated. The fleet took the northern Aegean islands of Imbros, Thasos and Samothrace, and then sailed into the Saronic Gulf. On 12 July, Capello landed at Piraeus, and marched against Athens, the Ottomans' major regional base. He failed to take the Acropolis, however, and was forced to retreat to Patras. Patras, being the capital of Peloponnese and the seat of the Ottoman Bey, was being besieged by the joint forces of Venetians and Greeks under the proveditore of the Mora, Giacomo Barbarigo, and Spartan commander Michael Rallis. Before Capello could arrive there, and as the city seemed on the verge of falling, Euboea suddenly appeared with 12,000 cavalry, and drove the outnumbered besiegers off. 600 Venetians and 100 others were taken prisoner out of a force of 2,000, while Barbarigo himself was killed, and his body impaled, while 100 Greeks fell and Rallis was captured and impaled. Capello, who arrived some days later, attacked the Ottomans, but was heavily defeated. Demoralized, he returned to Negroponte with the remains of his army. There Capello fell ill and died on the 13th of March 1467. Negroponte itself was taken by the Turks 3 years later. The war in Albania, 1466 to 1467. In spring 1466, Sultan Mehmed marched with a large army against the Albanians. Under their leader, Skenderbeg, they had long resisted the Ottomans, and had repeatedly sought assistance from Italy. For the Albanians, the outbreak of the Ottoman-Venetian War offered a golden opportunity to reassert their independence. For the Venetians, they provided a useful cover to the Venetian coastal holdings of Durazzo and Scutari. The major result of this campaign was the construction of the fortress of Elbasan, allegedly within just 25 days. This strategically sited fortress, at the lowlands near the end of the old Via Ignatia, cut Albania effectively in half, isolating Skanderbeg's base in the northern highlands from the Venetian holdings in the south. However, following the Sultan's withdrawal, Skanderbeg himself spent the winter in Italy, seeking aid. On his return in early 1467, his forces sallied from the highlands, defeated Balaban Pasha and lifted the siege of the fortress of Croia, attacked Elbasan but failed to capture it. Mehmed II responded by marching again against Albania. He energetically pursued the attacks against the Albanian strongholds, while sending detachments to raid the Venetian possessions to keep them isolated. The Ottomans failing again to take Croia, and they failed to subjugate the country. However, the winter brought an outbreak of plague, which would recur annually and sap the strength of the local resistance. Skanderbeg himself died of malaria in the Venetian stronghold of Lissus, Les, ending the ability of Venice to use the Albanian lords for its own advantage. The Albanians were left to their own devices, and were gradually subdued over the next decade. Final Albanian campaigns, 1474 to 1479. After Skanderbeg died, some Venetian-controlled northern Albanian garrisons continued to hold territories coveted by the Ottomans, such as Zabiljaknajevica, Drisht, Lezhë, and Shkodra. The most significant. Mehmed II sent his armies to take Shkodra in 1474 but failed. Then he went personally to lead the siege of Shkodra of 1478-79. The Venetians and Shkodrans resisted the assaults and continued to hold the fortress until Venice ceded Shkodra to the Ottoman Empire in the Treaty of Constantinople as a condition of ending the war. After the Venetian War, the Ottomans attacked Hungary, but their army was defeated in the Battle of Bredfield.